Have you ever stopped to think that the lines on a blueprint could literally be a matter of life and death? It's true. Every single choice a designer makes, from the type of materials they spec to the layout of a room, carries this hidden weight. In this explainer, we're going to dig into how these decisions can have huge consequences down the line and how a really critical process called safety in design is all about building safety in, right from the very start.
All right, let's dive right in by looking at the actual scale of the problem. It's easy to think of workplace accidents as these random, isolated events. But when you look at the numbers, a completely different picture emerges, one that points right back to decisions made long before anyone even stepped foot on a construction site.
So look at this number, 37%. According to research from safety authorities in both Australia and the UK, a staggering 37% of workplace fatalities they studied had design-related issues as a contributing factor. Think about that. That's more than 1 in 3 deaths with roots that trace all the way back to the drawing board.
And it's not just about fatalities. The impact is much, much broader. 2 of the biggest reasons for serious injury claims are body stressing and falls from height. And as you can see here, so many of these incidents could be drastically cut down with smarter design choices. Things like engineering out awkward manual handling tasks or just making sure non-slip surfaces are specified from day one.
This brings us to a really crucial point. Some studies are suggesting that nearly half of all accidents in the construction industry could have been prevented if a designer had intervened. This just highlights the immense power and responsibility that designers hold. Their influence stretches across the entire life of a project, and it affects everyone, from the workers building it to the people who will maintain and eventually decommission the structure.
So we've seen just how serious the problem is. Now let's switch gears and look at the solution. It's a concept known as safety in design, or SID for short, and honestly, it represents a fundamental shift in how we think about safety.
Okay, so this is the formal definition, straight from the work health and safety regulations. The key words to focus on here are integration and early. See, safe design is not an afterthought. It's not some safety check you bolt on at the end of the project. It's all about weaving risk management into the very fabric of the design process itself, making safety an inherent quality of the structure, not just an add-on.
This question really captures the whole mindset of safety in design perfectly. It's not so much a rigid procedure as it is a constant, challenging question. It forces designers to proactively look for safer ways of doing things and to really justify their decisions if they can. It's about building a culture of inquiry, not just a culture of compliance.
Now, there can be a lot of confusion about what safety in design actually is, so let's clear it up. It is a systematic process that looks at the entire life of a structure, from the day it's conceived to the day it's demolished. It's about how people will interact with that asset, and it is absolutely a shared responsibility. What it's not is just another risk assessment or a one-time checklist, and it's much broader than a technical process study that only looks at what could go wrong with the plan. SID is bigger, it's more proactive, and it's on everyone.
So, what does this systematic process actually look like in practice? Let's walk through how it builds a framework for safety across a project's entire lifespan.
This diagram really shows that design isn't just one single phase that happens at the beginning. Decisions are being made constantly, from the initial concept through the detailed design, during construction, and throughout its entire life and service, with all the maintenance and upgrades right up to its eventual decommissioning. Safety in design requires us to think about the safety impacts at every single one of these stages.
I know this flowchart might look a bit complex, but the core idea is actually really simple. It just shows how risk management is woven directly into every phase of the design. You can see how it starts way back in pre-design, continues through the conceptual stage, and gets more and more refined during development. It's a continuous loop of analyzing and reviewing, not a one-and-done checkbox exercise. Now, at the heart of this whole process is the hierarchy of controls. You can think of this as the playbook for making safety decisions. The number one priority, the most effective thing you can possibly do, is to eliminate the hazard completely. So for example, designing components that can be built on the ground completely eliminates the risk of working at height. It's only when you can't reasonably do that you move down the list to things like substitution, engineering controls, and then, as a final last resort, administrative controls and PPE. They're the least effective because they rely entirely on people behaving a certain way.
Let's break that down a little bit more. In that pre-design phase, it's all about gathering information. You're understanding the project's purpose, you're consulting with the client. Then in the conceptual phase, you start a broad hazard analysis. And finally, during the design development, you really get into the nitty-gritty, implementing specific control measures and doing detailed risk assessments. It's like a funnel, getting more and more granular as the design starts to become solid. Okay, so here's a crucial point. This process doesn't just happen in a vacuum. A designer can't do it all on their own. Real safety in design relies on a chain of responsibility and open, constant communication between absolutely everyone involved in the project.
This diagram illustrates that point perfectly. The solid lines, they show the contractual responsibilities, who's paying who. But look at those dotted red lines. Those represent the duties of consultation, cooperation, and coordination that are required by law. It doesn't matter what the project delivery model is. That obligation to communicate about safety connects everyone, the client, the designer, and the constructor.
So let's be really clear about who these key players are. The client, who's commissioning the work, has a duty to give the designer all the information they have about potential hazards and risks on the site. The designer, well, their duty is to design a safe structure. And the constructor, they need to be told about those design hazards so they can manage the physical work safely. Each person has a very distinct but very interconnected role to play.
And this right here is the legal and ethical foundation of the entire process. The Work Health and Safety Act makes this collaboration mandatory. It's not optional. Information has to flow freely between everyone so that risks identified by one person are understood and managed by everyone else. This is how we stop safety from falling through the cracks between different teams. So, we've looked at the problem, we've looked at the process, and we've looked at the people. So what's the ultimate goal here? What are we really aiming for? Well, it all boils down to a very simple but incredibly powerful idea.
This is the big takeaway. Safety in design is not some extra burden you have to add on, or a separate stream of work. It is simply good design. And good design is, at its heart, good engineering. When safety is treated as a fundamental part of quality, instead of just a compliance exercise, the entire project and everyone involved in it benefits.
And what does that good engineering actually look like? Well, it's built on these foundations. Having competent people who know what they're doing, having a solid process for managing changes, making sure you verify that the design actually works as intended, and this is a critical one, actually talking to the people who will build, use, and maintain the structure. When you have all these elements in place, a safe design becomes the natural, logical outcome.
So, we'll end with this question for you to think about. Because whether you're a client, a designer, a constructor, or even an end user, you have a role to play in this. Safety in design isn't some abstract concept. It's a series of real, practical decisions. So thinking about that one change you can influence makes this whole process tangible and reminds all of us that building a safer future really does start with the choices we make today.